The March 9th Planning Board meeting to order. And first on our agenda is, as usual, Paul, please read the instructions.
In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law relating to the 2020 novel coronavirus outbreak emergency, the March 9th, 2021 public meeting of the Falmouth Planning Board shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. Alternative public access to this meeting shall be provided in the following manner. 1, the meeting will be televised via Falmouth Community Television. 2, real-time public comment can be addressed to the planning board utilizing the Zoom virtual meeting software for remote access. This application will allow users to view the meeting and send a comment or question to the chair via the chat function. Submitted text comments will be read into the record at the appropriate time of the meeting. Login instructions. Instructions for the meeting link for this specific meeting can be found at the following address: www.falmouthma.gov/planning. Please plan on 10 to 15 minutes of preparation time to log in, though it may be less if you have previously used Zoom on the device you will use to access this meeting. 3, additionally, public comment may be sent in advance of the meeting to planning@falmouthma.gov at least 5 hours prior to the beginning of the meeting. Documents and audio or video files may also be submitted by email. Submitted email comments and documents will be made a part of the meeting record and may be read into the record, summarized, or displayed during the meeting at the discretion of the chair. 4, applicants, their representatives, and individuals with enforcement matters before the planning board may appear remotely and are not required to be physically present. Applicants, their representatives, and individuals with enforcement matters before the planning board may contact the planning department to arrange an alternative means of real-time participation if unable to use the Zoom virtual meeting software. Documentary exhibits and/or visual presentations should be submitted in advance of the meeting to falmouth@falmouthma.gov so they may be displayed for remote public access viewing.
Okay, and then we have the minutes of February 23rd, and we had set aside the minutes of February 13th. It's not on the agenda. Do you have anything on February 13th, Paul?
No, I do not.
Okay, so February 23rd then, please.
I recommend approval of the minutes of February 23rd as corrected.
Second.
Okay, so Paul and Charlotte. Anything else that anybody wishes to comment or add? Okay, please show approval by raising your hand. Okay, 7 out of 7 of us. Thank you. We have 3 approval not required tonight. Tom will walk us through them. The first one is the applicant Falmouth Air Park Homeowners Association, Inc. plan of land to combine a portion of parcel Z, and in parens Z1, with lot 67, map number 2902-015D-067, semicolon 000Z. And you have that in your packet, including the mapping of it. Paul, Tom,
I'm happy to share the screen if anyone would like to see the plan.
does anybody want to see the plan? John?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Madam
John.
Chair, I have to recuse myself.
Oh,
I'm a
right.
direct abutter.
Yes, thank you. I'd forgotten that, John. Thank you. Does anybody wish to have Tom share the screen, or do you feel comfortable?
I just want to get something clarified. When I was looking at it, there's that little triangle,
Mhm.
and that's going to get merged in. I didn't see the 67, and
Yeah.
it might have been just because I couldn't see it because it
It's 'cause you
wasn't.
didn't see it. Yeah, it's on there.
Yeah, so on the screen here, you see the parcel Z1.
Yeah.
So this little 38,674 square feet parcel will be merged with the taxiway. This-
Okay, so it's going to the taxiway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this is a
Okay.
product of the special permit that the board approved a modification in February of 2020, February
Yeah.
18th, 2020.
Yeah.
So this is the A&R plan that just puts that parcel as the board approved back in February 2018.
Okay. I wasn't sure which piece was absorbing it, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, and we do have Mr. Borselli on the line, but if I'm hoping Mike's pretty comfortable with me explaining that.
Yeah.
Move to endorse?
Okay. Moved and seconded to endorse. Show your hands, please. Paul, are you endorsing in favor or not? Okay, 6 out of the 6 who are eligible. I'm going to please tell you all that my internet connection is unstable tonight. You've been freezing up already, so I don't know what's going to happen. I apologize, but it's not me, it's Comcast. So, the next one on the agenda is Peter McConerty, plan of land to create a new parcel located at 888 Sandwich Road. And that's the fire station. Does anybody have any questions about that? You've all had it. You've had the map. Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah. I look at the map and I see where the parcel is going to be for the fire station. Immediately to the right of that, I think was intended to be the playground that was moved from the Gus County Center. Was that, or was that changed?
So for the record, what we have before us is proposed lot 2, but I know there's a couple questions about this, and I fielded a couple questions as well. So where you see it here, where it says the Town of Falmouth Board of Selectmen at the bottom of the football field, that's an area that's previously been cleared for a playground spot. I'm going to show you another picture of that. Let's try. Let's try that one. So here you see the proposed fire station site. And to the right of it is the proposed playground site. So that site towards the rear has been cleared for the playground. And then we got the fire station site here, and the remainder of the property, the last 330 feet at the back, remains wooded.
Okay, the other
Okay,
question I have is, may I?
yes, Paul.
The question I have is, immediately north of the site is a open area, and it says remain wooded. If I remember correctly, some years ago, the Recreation Committee tried to put another ball field in that site. And I don't know what happened to that. Does the development of this particular lot in that shape preclude the development of a ball field in that corner?
I cannot tell you that because I don't know what size they need for a ball field.
Well, you can look at the map, it shows the existing ball field, baseball field. It's a little bit bigger than that square, the way it's laid out.
Yeah, if you look at the properties to the right, the field and the ball field, they certainly seem larger than the rectangle for the remaining area there. I also have the GIS plot that I put together that we looked at our joint town meeting, our joint board meeting with the selectmen on February 13th. So this shows that area as well. This is the fire station site. It goes back 276 feet, and there's 300 plus feet towards the back of the property and another 300 feet across. So that's about 2.66 acres that remains wooded at the rear of the property.
Well, I'm in favor of the fire station at this location. I think it's very, very important. I just wonder about the shape of it and whether that precludes the development of the upper corner for future ball fields.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Oh, please, yes. I don't
Not
have
to
the
get-
full
not to
screen of
get-
everybody.
Not to get too far astray, but what's on the agenda this evening is to create the lot for the A&R plan. And as we saw with the air park, and as we'll see next with the Botellos, the role of the planning board at this point is just creating that lot. And if the lot has frontage on a public way and it's adequate frontage, the board, according to the Massachusetts general law, shall endorse the plan forthwith. So this is just creating the parcel that a fire station to be built will be on. In looking at the space requirements with the DPW director and the fire chief, they are very comfortable that you can put a fire station on this site with the requisite parking and maintain a 100-foot buffer to the Universal Unitarian Church. And as I said, the remainder of the property at the rear stays wooded at the back. So before us tonight is creating that proposed lot to 1.99 acres with 320.83 foot of frontage on a public way that is Sandwich Road.
And we endorse without the issue of buildability,
You are
Correct.
correct.
without regard.
So just,
So
Are
I
there
will
any-
move, I
Okay.
will move that we endorse this plan for that plot of land on Sandwich Road without regard to buildability.
Second,
Second,
okay, all in favor, show by raising your hands, please. Okay, so all 7 of us, thank you. And next, the applicant is Franklin Botello, plan of land to create 2 lots out of 3 located on Sandwich Road, map numbers 1701032D and 001002 and 003. Does anybody have any questions on this particular property? Okay, then I would need a motion again to endorse. Bob?
I move to endorse the Franklin Botello plan to create 2 lots out of 3 located on Sandwich Road without regard to buildability.
second,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Please show your hands. All in favor? Okay, 7 out of 7. Thank you. And now we are moving on to our public hearing, spring 2021 town meeting zoning articles, which we continued from last time, and we left it open for any kind of written comments. First on this is Article 21 to amend portions of Section 240-254 of the zoning bylaw, Article, oh, here I go, whatever it is, large-scale ground-mounted solar overlay district. This is why we're doing away with Roman numerals in the recodified. And we took that up together with Article 22 as far as commentary went, which is to amend the official zoning map of the town of Falmouth to include the parcels in the large-scale ground-mounted solar overlay district. But tonight, we really have to keep those separate because we're looking at them for potential recommendation to the town meeting warrant. So the first one is to amend the portions of Section 240-254 of the zoning bylaw article. And you all have gotten a tremendous number of letters in. As you may or may not recall, the last time a week ago, 2 weeks ago, we had 17 letters in opposition, and we had 3 letters, 4. And this time, I've got something out of order here. This time, what is it? We had an additional number of 72 in support and 23 in opposition. And as you also know, this is not a popularity contest. We don't do that. We are looking at these letters to know how the town is thinking and to stimulate our own questioning when we are contemplating a recommendation to town meeting. We have a new version of the revision to the solar overlay bylaw that came through, what was it, yesterday, Tom, I think?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I think we should share that so that people out in our viewing audience can see what the revisions are. Do you agree with that, all of you? Okay.
All
So
right.
can you share that on the screen, Tom?
I'll be happy to share it on the screen. And we do have Bob Ament in the room as well as the rest of his party as well. So I'm going to bring up the change to the zoning bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see how I do. So does that look an awful lot like something that says petitioned articles April 2021?
That's what it is.
Okay, swell. So this was the original article, and this is the revision that we received on dated March 8th. So I have taken the revision and did a compare document to the original March 2nd petition article. So this is what the article would read at this point. And with that on the screen, I'll turn it back over to the chair to recognize whomever they'd like.
Okay, now, I simply wanted our viewing audience to see that there is a change. It makes it difficult if this is on the screen for us to have any kind of discussion as to what is going on. Thank you. But I wanted our viewing audience to know that there have been substantial, well, I don't know that I call it substantial, but yes, they are revisions. To setbacks, to what can be disturbed and what has to be replanted. That's principally what it is, I think. And I think all of the planning board has this in front of you. I am going to, we read letters last time. I don't believe we should or can read letters when you consider the huge numbers of them. But I'm going to acknowledge the names of people so they know we actually did pay attention to them and we know what they're saying. In addition to those from last time, Jim, you're shaking your head. We're just acknowledging that we've gotten letters.
Well, everyone made such a point that we had to read the letters last time, and I objected to it. Now it doesn't seem like it matters.
I can't read 72 letters, Jim, sorry.
20 was ridiculous too. I'm just making a point that you don't want to hear that.
Understand that.
But we made it a policy last week. We're going to read all letters, and they objected to it, and we're reversing it today.
We have to.
I knew it.
I know. All right. So we have 72, La Tourette, Zuck Engstrom, Goldstein, Jocelyn, Beckenhaupt, and I would apologize if I'm mispronouncing anybody's names. Zuck, John Woods, Zimmerman, Andrea Woods, Klickstein, Goldman, Maloney, Acerkoff, Vandor, Hefferon, Carmen, Mangelsdorf, Walters, Honjo, Jones, Arnosti, Teskey, Ralston, Mincielli, Potamus, Comart, Soul, Ball, Hampton, Miller, Nick Lowell, Thomas, Hugan, Rader, CC Golf Guys, Shoot, Sunquist, Neubauer, Cuban, Byrne, Herman, Austin, Grimes, Ulbrich, Wheeler, Tudor, Fang, Moniz, Shaver, Walrath, Kelly, Husted, Stormer, Navala, Siska, Lyles, Bosler, Moskowitz, Slarsky, Raja, Sostek, Cullinane, Nelson, Marie Jelinek, Phillips, Theodore Jelinek, Lichtenstein, Vatuk, Picard, Scudder, Furtado, Coonamessett Pond Association, Cape Cod Chapter, Trout Unlimited, and Oppenheim. We were getting letters all the way up through the end of the day. Bob, you're on mute.
One of those was actually in opposition, the golf guys. It was an opposition letter that kind of made it into the support letter. So I just wanted to.
I agree. I didn't make that decision, and I thank you for pointing that out, Bob. Because we cannot read all of these letters, what I would like to do is to say, in summary, and I would ask any of you board members who would like to add more to this, please feel free to do so. But it appears that the overarching comments are wanting to have green energy, the preservation of water quality, and that includes if we get rid of the golf course and we do not have multiple houses, we will not have the phosphorus nor nitrogen added to the pond and other waterways, preservation of open space instead of housing, and a potential conversion to conservation land after the solar arrays have reached their lifespan. And because one letter seems to sum it up in a little bit more detail than that, I'm going to read a little bit of the bulleted points on this particular letter. There will be preservation of all standing trees bordering the pond and offset exceeding the 100-foot buffer required by the Conservation Commission. Offsetting lost trees by planting new trees similar in kind and quantity equivalent to the carbon sequestration potential of those trees taken in high habitat value locations near the pond. Prohibiting the use of fertilizers and other chemicals that degrade pond water quality, and planting wildflower meadows in lieu of chemical weed control. Designing an environmentally sensitive, publicly accessible trail network developed in cooperation with the Coonamessett Pond Association's Trail Advisory Committee and other stakeholders, and committing to financially underwrite the most significant pond water quality monitoring system anywhere on Cape Cod in cooperation with the CPA. Further, the solar proposal envisions placing the land into permanent conservation at the conclusion of the project, a real win. It is important to protect the pristine nature of Coonamessett Pond. Let's see. I believe that pretty well sums up the letters that are in favor. Does anybody on the board wish to add anything further to this summation? Charlotte?
I'd like to add, because several of the people did say, first of all, we got the letters in plenty of time to read them all, so that this wasn't a rush job. We saw them, we saw their numbers, and I really appreciate the time that people have taken to respond to this. I've never seen such an outpouring in the 4 years that I've been on the board. Second, many of the letters pointed out that the golf course is right in the middle of our largest water resource district, right on top of the aquifer. And it's Coonamessett Pond, it's Deep Pond, it's Crooked Pond, and the abutters to all of those ponds are solidly in favor of the solar array. And they made that point. And it has to do with preserving the water quality entirely. The letters that were in opposition were very concerned about trees. These people are very concerned about water. And they make the point that although the trees may regrow and might be replaced, it will take time to do that, but they will be back. But the water quality is likely to be ruined for a very long time, if not permanently. So I just wanted to say these points were emphasized and they're very persuasive.
Okay, does anybody else wish to add anything from the board? I'm going to go to the negative now. Bob?
Yeah, there was one letter writer who suggested that some of the trees be used around town. And he mentioned the tree warden has a list of trees that are either have been taken down or need to be taken down, and that they could use some of the trees that would have gone onto this property to replace some of those. It's just one idea. But the other thing too is people talk about carbon sequestration with trees, and trees aren't the only things that sequester carbon. You've got all that open grassland that doesn't sequester a whole lot that will then be covered with pollinator garden and wildflowers and natural vegetation to the Cape. So they will also sequester carbon. So it isn't just trees. And as I mentioned before, if you walk through these forests, there are a lot of trees that aren't sequestering any carbon anymore.
Jim?
Yes, I just wanted to point out, we had an awful lot of letters and position papers taken by significant boards in this town that they really didn't take into consideration along the local comprehensive plan, that our goal has always been to increase the lot sizes out here and prevent development and bring it towards the center. And I think a lot of the groups forget about that plan we've all voted on and we're working on it. I just didn't understand why they jumped to the conclusion that it was a bad thing, when if we didn't do it, they're going to build 45 houses right away because they're all A&Rs. We would have been out of control. I just don't see how they came to that conclusion so quickly.
That's going to be part of our discussion when we go to 21 to decide what the referral is going to be. The letters in opposition, aside from the 17 that we got last time, we have gotten another 23 total. And those are the Cape Cod Climate Change Collaborative, Bagley, Vicky Lowell, Martinage, Mount, Bent, Johnson, DaCosta, Young, Parks, Howard, Emmons, 300 Committee, Turner, APCC, Hecox, Leah, Devane, Michael Katzeff, Donald, Cynthia Katzeff, Gould, Welch, Schad, Energy Committee, and Starkey. And in summing up their thoughts, Jerry Patamas asked, is this spot zoning? And I'd like to ask Tom to talk to that in a minute. The deforestation, they don't want to see any deforestation there. The desire for the historic golf course to remain as it is, a golf course. Some of what it's almost 100-year-old golf course, but it would take away from recreation for the Cape if that were removed. And if we voted this in, it would be the antithesis of the original intent of the overlay district, which was to use disturbed/blighted properties, principally when we did an overlay district, so that they could be put into useful use. Does anybody else wish to add anything more to this list that I may have missed for those who are opposed to this? Okay, then I'm going to ask Tom to answer the question of spot zoning, because although there was only one, there may have been two that asked that question. It may be a question that others have in their minds and should be addressed, I think, at this time. Tom, could you respond to that and describe what spot zoning is versus this?
Yeah, I would actually looking for my official notes, but essentially I'm going to speak extemporaneously here. But spot zoning is the zoning of a individual parcel to benefit one particular individual. It is usually not in compliance with the goals and policies of the town. It is simply, picking out this one parcel and rezoning it to benefit one particular party. I'll do a better job of this when we get to with a little bit more of preparation. But when we looked at creating the zoning overlay district for initially, we looked at putting together multiple parcels along the Blacksmith Shop Road. The second one we did was for multiple parcels for the Barnstable County Fairgrounds. Those are multiple parcels and they were all owned by one party. It wasn't a case of spot zoning there because it was in the policy of the board to look at those opportunities. And I think there's a very similar parallel to here, that while there are multiple parcels and they're owned by one particular party, the zoning is not outside of the policy concerns of the town, and they are not specifically to benefit one individual. And I will give my full-on notes in for our next meeting. We have this discussion on the 16th to make sure that I didn't misspeak in any way.
Okay.
Short answer is it's not spot zoning.
Not spot zoning. Yeah. Okay. Does anybody want to have further commentary on the changes that Attorney Ament has made to the proposed bylaw? change? Okay, I don't see anybody. We can close the hearing tonight. Charlotte?
Pat, I actually would
Yes.
like Bob to talk about the changes. Not everybody who wrote letters may be really aware of them. And I think
Okay.
it'd be good that he had listened to the opponents and he's making adjustments. And I would like an opportunity to ask Bob a few questions.
I've got no problem with that, but I was asking the board if anybody wanted, and so I would like to have Bob elevated and whoever else would be appropriate to speak to the changes. So, Bob, do you want to be by yourself, or would you like somebody else to be elevated as well?
Thank you, Pat. I think that I can handle this, but if Evan Turner is included, you could elevate him. Evan Turner.
Evan Turner. That's fine, but if you just want to speak to it, that's also fine. Hi,
Sure.
Evan.
Okay. Our original proposal provided for a possible reduction, not only abutting conservation property, but also where property was in common ownership or along the roads. And there was no limit on how little the setback could be, which would be consistent with residential agricultural zoning, which would allow clearing right to a property line, would allow fencing, pavement right along property line, structures, small structures 3 feet from a property line, large structures 10 feet from a property line. The change is to limit the reduced setback to no less than 35 feet, which is the setback that would apply for solar arrays other than in a residential or agricultural district. So no less than 35-foot setback. We also eliminated the right to reduce the setbacks from the street or from commonly owned property. So we're only talking about being able to have the planning board through site plan review reduce the setback next to conservation property, permanent conservation property. And as you know, we have about 1.5 miles of abutting conservation property on this parcel. The setbacks are intended to protect people, protect residential properties. And we don't think that having the solar array particularly with a 35-foot setback will have any adverse impact on conservation property. I understand that some people would like as little property developed as possible, but the purpose of that setback is, as I say, to protect people, and we're going to only be able to have that reduction against open space. I point out that even if this was a cluster subdivision of houses, the town bylaw only requires that the buffer area be 25 feet. Here we're proposing a 35-foot setback. The other change that's made is that we had requested permission to be able to deforest, to remove trees, but always with the intention that there would be mitigation either in the form of open space provided or reforestation. In fact, one of the holes, the fourth hole, is not part of the solar array, but proposed that it would be purchased, and there'd be 7 acres there that could be reforested and permanently preserved. We may also be able to do that with one of the other holes on the course. But we've changed that proposal. We suggested a recommended bylaw that would allow the additional clearing besides what the bylaw already allows to not more than 4 acres of the lot or 10% of the lot whichever is less. The purpose of being able to adjust where the forest is to significantly increase the output of the solar array, and to put forests, plant trees as a buffer to nearby residences. So in addition to reducing the additional clearing of trees that could be allowed, we've also provided that for any additional trees beyond the 2 acres by right, that the mitigation requirement would be twice the area of the trees that are removed. So those would be minimum requirements, in the site plan review process. It would allow public input, and the goal is to come up with the best plan with the least adverse impacts. If the trees could be cut right now by the golf course and residential development, people could cut trees. We're not talking about trees that are within Conservation Commission jurisdiction. The upshot is that we think that these proposed changes, what we hope you'll recommend, we think are responsive to concerns that have been raised, and protect all the interests. I'd also like to point out that we simply eliminated the request to stipulate that the earth moving regulations of the zoning bylaw would not apply. We don't think it does apply. As I said at the previous meeting, the particular provisions of the earth moving regulations make it clear that it couldn't apply to any of these large-scale ground-mounted solar array projects, because I think it's a 5-acre limit that it can be applied to. The goal of that bylaw is to regulate mining operations, but the reference to that was concerned people. We don't think it applies anyway. We just take it out. It's no longer, it's not in what we recommend. There's no mention of earth moving in that. Whatever the regulations are, through site plan review would apply. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, Bob, I'm going to point out something else, and you can disagree with me if you like, but it occurred to me when I was reading this change, is the words may and shall. I'd like to point out that the word may says that the planning board may allow a side or rear yard abutting permanently conserved open space to be reduced. We don't have to.
Right, that is true, and yet the requirement for mitigation of double the acreage of a tree clearing, that has the word shall.
Correct. That means you have to do it. And there's another may in there too. The planning board may allow additional deforestation of up to 4 more acres or 10%. So again, that is at the discretion of the planning board when the plans come before the planning board. And I think it's important that people recognize that.
That's right. This is, the bylaw, the solar bylaw is a by right bylaw, that we're not changing anything that's in the bylaw that's by right. The only changes we're proposing would allow under certain circumstances with the planning board review and with the substantial double mitigation, there could be some adjustments to the plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Bob. Do any other planning board members have any further questions about this change? Charlotte, and you're on mute, Charlotte.
Thank you, but no, not about the change. I think I understood that what's happening is he's putting back a 35-foot setback along the conservation land. He's reducing the acreage of cutting trees, and he is taking out entirely any mention of earth moving. all in response to what we heard at our last meeting.
Mhm.
My questions actually are along a different line. I didn't really fully understand the terms of all of this transaction with the Friels. Will AMP be leasing the land or buying it?
Well, AMP has a lease in place for the three major parcels. And intends or hopes, it's not certain, but hopes to be able to do a solar project on the golf course with those parcels and put into the solar overlay district. And expects that that would generate around 17 megawatts of power, a very, very substantial project, even under the present bylaw. However, with the additional acreage that would be available for the solar array with the changes we've suggested, the energy output would be substantially greater, even though there'll be no net decrease, in fact, an increase in forested area. We get to 27, maybe even 30 megawatts as the estimate. That's a very significant difference. And the financial return under that circumstance is very different. It would allow AMP to purchase the property and not just the little various other parcels that are owned by the golf club that wouldn't necessarily be developed for
So
solar.
can I ask you a separate question, Bob? If in fact the town meeting doesn't approve Article 21 for whatever reason, AMP would plan to go ahead with the smaller array?
Probably, that's not for sure.
Okay, and that would leave the
The answer is
Friels.
probably. In other words, I'd like to emphasize that, first of all, we hope that Article 21 passes. But if Article 21 does not pass at town meeting, we certainly want Article 22 to pass, because the expectation is we would still be able to do a solar project. It won't be as significant a project. It won't have as many benefits. It doesn't provide enough return to be able to afford to purchase the property and put it into conservation after the life of the solar. It doesn't give as much opportunity for affordable housing and the like. It's just a much better project if it can be a more efficient and a larger project. I'd
But it
point
also
out-
leaves the Friels free. If in 21 doesn't pass, the Friels still have a lot of land to sell that could become an enormous 40B or single house project. Is that right?
Well, just first of all, the agreement for purchase of the entire property has not been reached. It's at a discussion stage, and those discussions will go on if Article 21 passes. Remember, we don't need to have Article 21 passed to do a solar project, but the solar project just becomes much, much better.
And it protects the land from turning into an enormous housing project.
Well, that's eventually, but remember, for instance, there's 8 acres of business-owned land where the Falmouth Playhouse used to be.
Mhm.
That a large turnaround area and a 3.5 acre piece, that's business owned. That isn't included in the array planned for without the zoning bylaw change. The parcel where there's a condominium up on near Ranch Road on Boxbury Hill Road, that's not included either. The point is there's an opportunity to do more in answer to your question.
Okay, one last point. I don't understand the 40-year provision or 30-year provision. At the end of the lifespan of the solar array, wouldn't you just replace the solar panels? Why would you close down?
Evan's going to answer that. It's hard for me to predict 40 years from now. It's only what we can set in place as conditions now, which is the type of thing we could do as far as that purchase. We could agree now, if the zoning has changed, to a purchase and the permanent protection of the property after we can do stuff. What's going to happen in 40 years, I don't know. But Evan.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. So one slight misconception that has been consistent in the letters I saw as well. If we mimic what we did on Catuit Road and Sandwich, which we intend to with the Cape Cod Commission and this property, in the event that we get Article 21 passed and we can purchase conserve, the idea is to purchase up front, donate the property to the town immediately, wholesale, and prior to that donation, have reached a lease agreement with the town so that the land is immediately into conservation, but allows the solar array as the one exception. So there's no waiting 40 years.
Is that a lease in lieu of paying taxes on land?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. That's just a lease because if you guys own the land, we have to have a lease. But it's no way replaces the tax part of it. That's a whole separate thing. So the reason the idea is that, say, if we use 75 acres for solar in that Article 21 scenario with conservation donation, the other 75 go right into town conservation. Because we only use 75, there's 75 left over. It's town land at that point. And then more or less, whenever the solar runs out, whenever it's no longer needed, viable, necessary, whatever, then the town would be able to, have us remove the array and would just have the land back. But it's really a question of, when you do that lease, typically they are 20-year base periods with the array has the right to extend for another 20 years. But that's the kind of discussion you have with the town when you want to set up a lease agreement for land that they will then own. So the idea is to lock it up right away and then just let the solar run its course, because none of us are concerned in 40 or 50 years. The town can make its own decisions at that point.
I don't know, get your shots. We might all be here.
Yeah.
I'll only be 106, so.
Right. You're young, Bob.
Thank you. I've never heard of this arrangement before, so I wondered how it
we
works.
literally made it up on our sandwich project with the Cape Cod Commission, and we really like the shape of it because we're not worried about the land reselling in 50 years. So it seems like a real interesting thing to do to make part of the project conservation, because that's, some of the balance of solar is we use a lot of land. We'd like to conserve a lot of land. It just dovetails really well into what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure that the board recognizes that this is, excuse me, a little bit broader in discussion than we would normally have on a change for a bylaw, because we're all trying to understand the implications of what this change would mean. This would be a standalone change to the solar overlay district that would then be capable of being used forevermore. So we have to understand it in that light too, as well as for this particular instance. And excuse me, I saw a comment come through in the chat from Doug Brown. I don't know if that's an apropos thing to bring out now, Tom.
Well, Mr. Brown's question is, can the town offer transfer development rights to the property owners and purchase the golf course? It's the best golf course in Falmouth and a significant wildlife resource. I would say likely a bit outside the scope of what we're talking about, but in looking at the town's bylaw for transfer development rights, it is of an adequate size and in the proper zoning districts to be eligible if someone was to attempt to create a TDR and take these units from here and send them elsewhere. Where would those rights land is a whole nother issue.
So right now, that's a head scratcher issue that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I just saw it flash by and I didn't know. Thank you, Tom. Are there any other questions from the planning board that they wish either Bob or Evan to answer at this point? Okay, then I think it is appropriate, excuse me, to close the hearing and continue, take it under advisement and continue it until our next meeting. May I have such a motion?
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. I saw Bob, even though I couldn't hear him. So moved by Charlotte, seconded by Bob to close this hearing and then to take it under advisement, and we will bring it up at our next meeting on the 16th. Okay, all in favor? Show of hands, please. Okay, thank you all. And thank you, both of you, for your time tonight and further explaining this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now we move on to Article 22. And we've had really no objection to Article 22, which is simply to bring the solar overlay district as it currently exists and allow it to be used on this particular parcel. So this becomes part of the solar overlay district. I don't think I've misstated anything about that. Have I, Tom? Tom?
Sorry, ma'am, I was working the
Oh.
back room there. I missed your question.
Okay, my question is on Article 22, it's simply to use our current solar overlay district and apply it to this particular area.
Correct.
Okay,
And those parcels have been enumerated in the Article 22 that was presented by the petitioner. We
right.
also have a map of the area that I'm happy to share for a moment if folks would like to see what that area is as well. But I think we're fairly familiar with it.
We are. Does anybody on the planning board wish to see that map? Okay, so on this, then, what I would need is a motion to close this.
I'll move to close the hearing on Article 22.
Okay, and then after this is over, we can take a vote on that as to, or I think that's the way to do it. We need to close it first.
Yeah.
And then we can take a vote either now and then move on to the next one. So may I have a motion? You moved to close it.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to close the discussion on Article 22. Please, a show of hands. Okay, all of us are in favor of closing this. If you wish, we can take up the vote now. And then if there are no further questions, Doug Brown is opposed, but that hasn't to do what we're doing right now. He's opposed to including the area in the solar overlay district. We can either take it up right now, or we can wait until we go through the rest of the articles. So if you want to take it up now, I would need a motion to recommend this as printed to the warrant, or we can take it up later. Which is your druthers? Charlotte?
Pat, I think chances are we've heard from everyone we're going to hear from, unless Doug wants an opportunity to for more input.
No, that's not it. We've closed the hearing. We voted on closing the hearing, so we're not getting more input. He was just registering his opposition.
I see. Okay, then I
If-
move we close it now.
Well, we did already, and we
Oh.
voted on that, so it's closed. The question is, do you want to take a vote on it right now?
Yes.
So we want to move to recommend this article as printed for the town warrant.
Second.
And Bob had a comment on that, which,
Yeah, but my comment was really misplaced because this
Oh,
is
okay.
Article 22 and it's just those parcels.
right. Okay, so it's as printed, we recommend that as printed to the warrant, Article 22. Any further discussion on that? All right, please, with a show of hands. All in favor? Okay, it's 7 out of 7 to recommend it as printed to the warrant. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. So we move on to Article 18 to amend the zoning bylaw. Article 39, site plan review, by replacing section 240-192 applicability. And I've got to find that somewhere, all the wording on that. That was the one that Laura had quite a lot to say on that, I believe. And that would be Michaela who would have her recommendations on that, I believe. You all got that.
I can bring up the language on the screen if you like, Madam Chair.
Does anybody want the language brought up on the screen? I've got my copy right in front of me. Doesn't look like anybody cares, Tom, so.
I'm okay not to share just this one time.
Laura Moynihan brought up quite a bit. And Michaela spent a lot of time going through it. And what you have is on the 3rd page of what we got today. That would be the one, Tom, if anybody wanted it to be brought up instead of Laura's specific comments, I think. It has to do with the parking spaces. And as you saw, Michaela said, yeah, she agreed with both, putting both in there. But she also thought that Laura's comments in section A needed perhaps some planning board discussion. When you all looked at that, did you believe we should discuss it further?
Tom, could you bring that up? Thank you. Easier for me to read it like this.
Okay.
So I believe what you see in front of you is a very colorful document with blacks, blues,
Right.
reds, and greys. So red are the things that were taken out of the bylaw. Black's the existing language. The blue bold are additions. And down here in line 4, you see a both that's been removed and a both that's been added. And so this was one of Laura Moynihan's questions. She thought it was, and I don't want to steal Michaela's thunder, but she thought that that removing the word both created some additional confusion there. And I'll just turn it over to Michaela for her comments on that.
Okay.
That's okay. It was a spring day, so I didn't have any thunder today at all. So, but no, Tom, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Laura had gone through and she felt that removing the word both created a little bit of confusion as to whether we were saying any 2 parking spaces would require this or kind of what the parking spaces issue was. So after we reviewed it, we put the word both back in. So that's why you see it crossed out in red, but then back in green, just so it's very clear that it was removed previously when you saw it. It's now back in green. But Pat, I believe the one that you were referencing was her comment number 6, section A.
Yes.
Yes. So to kind of speak specifically for that one, she had questioned whether the word substantial for work or alteration being substantial, if that word was too vague and that the board should have guidelines or restrictions in the bylaw itself. We had previously had some in, but the board had wanted them to be removed. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I believe it was you wanted the board to have a little bit more wiggle room.
Flexibility.
Yes,
Right.
thank you.
That's correct, yes.
To decide, with the project that was presented before you, rather than having very strict and tight guidelines that kind of pigeonhole you into something.
Right.
But that was Laura's comment, so I just wanted to make that one very obvious to you guys.
Yeah, sometimes you can get too specific and you box yourself in, and we've always tried to avoid that. I have a question on the previous slide with some of the wording that I just kind of reread again, and it seemed different to me. When we were talking about both, that line there, it says both the existing redevelopment. So how can a redevelopment be existing?
There's a comma after existing, Bob.
On both the existing redevelopment or new
No,
development?
no, right after the word existing, there's a comma.
Okay.
There probably should be a comma also after redevelopment.
Yeah, that kind of
Continuity.
threw me a bit. Yeah. Because I read it as existing redevelopment, and I'm thinking to myself, you have existing redevelopment.
Yeah.
But it becomes even more clear though, because it's easy with the bolding of the blue to ignore the comma. It would be even more clear, I think, if there were a comma after the word redevelopment.
Yeah.
So it would be both the existing comma, redevelopment comma, and or new development.
You usually don't have and after a comma though.
Yeah.
So you could have redevelopment or new development. Doesn't need an
Okay.
and.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll take the word and slash out, correct?
Well,
Because you have both,
Should
and
we
you have
keep
three things too.
should we keep and or new development? And the only reason I ask is there are times where you may have a project that partly it's being redeveloped, but you may be adding on to it. You may be developing another portion of the property.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Or should new be additional? Or additional new development?
If I may, we borrowed this language, I'm going to say from Reading.
Honestly, it was a mixture of about 5 different communities. I think Reading was a top contender in who I used. So that, yes.
So we try to find things that are applicable to the town and sort of try to parse someone else's language. But, it's our bylaw, and we could put any of those suggestions in there. But we just sort of parsed from to make sure, we wanted to make sure we covered the existing development. If there was a redevelopment or any new development that required a change in that layout. So that's the gist, to make sure that we hit all the spots, whether we're expanding, redeveloping, or creating a new development.
Well, one of the confusing factors is that when you have the word both, you think of that as two.
Right, exactly.
And again, if you use the word either, you think of two. So I can't think of another word in there that would indicate more than two that we could put in based on the existing, unless you took the word both out.
Just say spaces
Based on the existing.
the existing.
I
Right.
think that's better. Because both is one or the other. One and the other.
So you have based on the existing, redevelopment, or new development.
Right.
I'd throw a plug in for either myself, because you can have multiple choices with either.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could, but you know what's causing the problem? We've got redevelopment, new development. How about existing development? Adding that word in there. Based on the existing development, redevelopment, or new development.
That would work.
Yeah.
That
That
makes
would
it
work.
clear, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Much.
Okay. Based on, take the word both out. Based on the existing development, comma, redevelopment, or new development. Do you all think that clarifies it sufficiently?
By golly, you've got it.
I thought it was by George, you got it.
No, that was My Fair Lady. By golly,
Oh,
you've got it.
okay.
Gee,
Thanks for going back to that, Bob. That was disconcerting. You're right.
we still haven't added the word development after existing yet.
Oh,
I'm a very slow typist.
Okay.
be careful because you don't know what his fat fingers are going to put in there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't worry, I've been taking notes on my end as well.
So if I may, so that sentence now reads, 2 or more parking spaces based on the existing development, comma, redevelopment or new development, comma, or require a change to the layout or parking of 2 or more parking spaces, comma, an increase in pavement of more than 300 square feet, comma, or the alteration of any driveway.
You all happy with that?
What would the Bob say?
Funny you should ask. I'm actually doing a session for the National Planning Conference with Bob Ritchie on clarity in writing and run-on sentences. So I expect to be spoken to by Bob Ritchie.
Severely spoken to, I think. Okay, is there anything else that we want to change on this one?
No, the rest looks pretty good to me.
I thought
Me
so as
too.
well. So I did not think we would be ready to vote on this tonight. Do you want to take any more time on it? Or do you feel we can recommend it as amended?
Recommend as amended.
You think we're to that point?
Yes.
Okay, let's close the hearing. May I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to close the hearing. And mind you, I cannot see you, so
Yeah,
please.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, all right. If there's no further discussion, is there any further discussion on this? Please raise your hand in affirmation. John? Yep, okay, so that's all 7 of us to close the hearing. And then you think we're far enough along that we can now take a vote for the warrant as, what did I say, as
As amended,
As amended.
Thank you.
I move to recommend Article 18 as amended for the town warrant.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Raise your hand. Thank you. 7 out of 7. Wow. Hey, we're doing well tonight. Thank you very much, all of you. Okay, we go to Article 19. To amend the zoning bylaw of Article 39, site plan review by amending section 240-198, lapse of decision. And
Could you put that up, please?
the Article 19,
Yes.
okay. Thank you, Tom. Put it up if you will.
Thank you so much.
Pat, I have a question. You may not see my hand.
Oh, I didn't. Yes, now I do, Jim. Thank you. What?
Isn't this a state law already that changed from 2 to 3?
For a special permit, but this is for site plan. There's no state laws about site plan.
Okay, sorry.
By the way, I'm not sure I have Article 19 on the screen for you.
You do.
You do.
Okay, good for me.
It says to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaw action, Article 39, site plan review by amending section 240-198, lapse of decision, to extend the period by 1 year by replacing the words 2 years with 3 years. To read, a site plan review decision issued under this article shall lapse 3 years from the date it is granted if a substantial use thereof has not sooner commenced except for good cause. The determination of good cause shall be made by the planning board or do or take any other action on this matter on behalf of the planning board. I don't know that are any questions. Are there any questions on this? I think we were pretty well locked in on that as an easy beans thing. Okay, so I would need to have a motion to close the hearing.
So move.
Second,
Moved and seconded to close the hearing. All in favor, raise your hands, please. 7 out of 7. And then I would need a motion to recommend as printed to the warrant.
So move.
second,
Again, moved and seconded. No further discussion? Raise your hand, please. Okay, 7 out of 7. Awesome. We are moving right along here.
Article 20.
Yeah, that's you, Tom. You got to be on big time on this one.
Alrighty, if I may share the screen.
Yes, please.
So I'm hoping what you see in front of you is Article 20 to amend the zoning map.
Yes,
No?
it is. Yes.
Okay, very good. So, and it's almost, so this is largely a housekeeping article, although I hate to say that because people point out it's not a housekeeping article when you say that, but essentially we have various conflicts in our zoning map, and this would make all our zoning maps consistent across the board and update our map from its 2006 status. So originally we had talked about removing the text boxes. I believe you may have a map in front of you that says amend zoning map, blue with a couple of white boxes in the parcels. So we looked at the versions of the zoning map that we have, the online version on the left and the one that the town clerk sells on the right. And working with Bob Shea, our GIS guy, here is a comparison of the two maps presently. Now, I know that Charlotte was very much wanted to see the minimum requirements remain in the legend. They're a bit problematic for our GIS guy, but I'm sure we can work through it if it's the will of the board to do that. But typically from Bob and Bob's memo from the summer, they had recommended just keeping it down to the zoning articles for better readability. So here on the left, we see the existing zoning map with the footnotes, the legend with the minimum requirements. And in this revised version, we see in the bottom right, simply the legend that shows all the particular articles. And then down below it is this text that says, and I'm going to zoom in a bit further on that and see if we can still see that, that the various zoning districts that we have, the overlay districts, aren't referenced on our zoning map. Now, you cannot get all of our zoning and all of the overlay districts on one map. So with this amended map, we would have the legend of all the existing zoning and then a reference to all the overlay districts that are within the zoning bylaw. So the revised map shows all the parcels on it. It shows all the zoning on it. It has the update to April 2021. And then we would include with that the zoning overlay map, which I think you're seeing in front of you. So this is the revised zoning map with the legend, the text boxes out, with the reference to all the zoning overlays that are on the accompanying map. So that would be the bring to town meeting, make the maps consistent with each other, and to identify all the outlying, all the zoning overlay districts on the map. You can see, if you can imagine, taking all this, I'm going to call it stuff, that's a technical term, all this stuff on the right and trying to put it on the map on the left, how difficult it would be to read that. For the most part, some of these overlay, those are the overlay districts that we have in place. Falmouth has been very creative over the years in its use of overlay districts.
Okay, are there any questions or comments in regard to this article and what Tom has shown you?
Looks like gerrymandered congressional districts.
That's right.
Like I said, the important thing to note is that no properties are being rezoned. There's no changes to the zoning on any properties. It's simply a matter of modernizing our map, getting the parcels up to date, having the revised date on it, and having all the maps that we produce, whether they are online or whether you buy one from the town clerk, that they are consistent and they show the same information.
So I'll move to close the hearing.
Second,
Okay, it's moved and seconded to close the hearing. John? You're on mute, John. Please unmute yourself.
I'm in favor.
Oh, okay, that's what that was. All in favor, please show hands. Okay, 7 out of 7 in favor of closing the hearing. Now, I assumed, perhaps incorrectly, that we would be continuing this to our next meeting and have a further discussion on it. What say you all?
I don't know, what is there further to discuss?
I have no idea. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear cut.
I agree.
There's no dispute on that. Okay, then I would need a motion to recommend to the warrant as printed.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to that the planning board recommend to the warrant as printed. All in favor? Show hands. Okay, 7 out of 7. All right, out of this then, we're going to have another meeting next week, and it was for the sole purpose of voting on the ones that Tom and I both thought we would have to continue to that point. We only figured out of these we would get 2 closed off tonight. So we still have Article 21, which is the one that garnered all of the commentary and garnered most of the discussion tonight, and that would be the absolute sole point on the agenda for the 16th. I just wanted to make that clear to the planning board because we didn't feel that we could vote on it tonight. We wanted to have substantially more discussion on it and felt we needed time to discuss. So I wanted to make sure that you all understood that it would be an exceptionally short meeting next Tuesday.
that's fine.
Okay?
I don't think anyone is going to
Who's
complain
going to
about it.
object to that, right?
I don't think so.
We can find ways to extend it.
You really want to, Bob? All right. So on our moving on now, we have public discussion. The applicant is Devaney Building Corporation site plan review application to construct a 50-foot by 100-foot by 34-foot tall storage building at 266 Woods Hole Road. And this is the oceanographic. And present, I believe we have Liza Cox to speak to it. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes, ma'am. Just letting our VJ know that we are promoting Don Devaney and Liza Cox. We also have Dave DeRozier in the house as well. I don't know if Dave wants to come onto the screen and join us as well.
Okay. So I will open the floor to you all to describe what's going on here.
I have a question, Pat.
Yes, Jim.
In the information that we were sent, there was conflicting, it looked to me that there was conflicting opinions, whether this is really covered by the Dover Amendment or not. I was wondering if that could be clarified by our staff, because I thought I saw 2 different opinions and I'm confused.
Not really, but let's let Tom describe what we can look at.
Yes, we received a letter from Liza Cox. She was very gracious to send us her opinion, which we shared with town council, and town council concurred with Ms. Cox that the property was subject to the Dover Amendment because of the work that Hui does and the function of this building in Hui's mission. But town council felt that it was appropriate for limited site plan review. Limited site plan review, as we know from the Quistit campus building and from College Light Opera, is limited to the height, setbacks, bulk, and parking for the building. So we don't get into design review. We don't get into some of those other things. It is a strictly limited scope of review to the height, bulk, setbacks, parking for the structure.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'll open it to the applicants.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. For the record, my name is Eliza Cox. I'm an attorney with Nutter, McLennan and Fish. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. I'm actually going to ask Don Devaney to walk you through the project, and then I'm happy to try and answer any questions that you may have.
Don,
Mr. Devaney?
I was going to ask Don if he had slides prepared or he wanted me to put the plans up on the screen.
Ah,
Oh,
what?
are you muted, Don? Is that what you're trying to say?
He is muted, yes.
You unmute yourself?
No, not yet.
Down in the bottom left of your
There we
screen.
go.
There you go, Don.
Got it.
Perfect.
I can do either, Tom. My name's Don Devaney. It's Devaney Building Corp. I'm the applicant for Hui. If you allow me to share the screen, I can do it, or if you want to put up.
Since you know what you're going to talk about, Mr. Devaney, why don't you share the screen, because then you can move it as you need to.
Great. So just to start, this is the site plan, which was done by Dave Martin, the local engineer. Woods Hole Road is out here quite a ways. There is an existing water main coming up the driveway and through the garden to the left of the entrance drive. We're going to tap into that and continue an 8-inch water main approximately halfway up the driveway to a hydrant, which was asked for by the fire department. Just before that hydrant, we're going to tap a 2-inch water line, come up the driveway, connect to the building. The current proposed area for the septic system is on the right-hand side of the building as you face it. We have 1 through 5 parking spaces across the front. There are 3 overhead doors. There are 3 man doors. No work's going to be done below elevation 60. Right here by this note, that is the current limit of work is right here, elevation 60, which goes around the building. We're not contributing any more to any runoff from water. As you can see, there are already 2 existing catch basins here. We're not touching any of this. We're not adding pavement. We may have to regrade this pavement here and reinstall it, but we're not adding any pavement. All of the gutters run into the leaching catch basin at the rear of the building. And that's really it for the site plan. Continuing on, we've got the specifics of the septic system, all the details. This sheet depicts possible regrading of the road to access it with some specialized trailers for equipment that will be coming in and out of this building. This is the schematic plan of the building, so it's just really a large box. The inside will have a 25-ton crane to move the equipment around. This is the front side of the building. Again, there's a man door, an overhead door, an overhead door, and a man door. At the rear of the building, there is one man door, one overhead door. Inside the building, we have 2 bathrooms per the state code. Exterior of the building, very, what I'll call a vanilla building. It's 34 feet 10 to the ridge. There are a total of 6 lights on the whole building. The man door lights, which you see right here, here, and here, are very low wattage LED lights that are on a photocell. There are lights positioned above all 3 overhead doors for nighttime unloading, which I don't think there's going to be any of. Those are all on a manual switch for each one individually. So they will not come on at night at all unless they're going to unload something for safety reasons. A perspective view of the building, perspective view the other angle. These pictures are from 35 feet in the air above the ground looking at Rex Lane. Let me just go back and show you on the plan. So the picture was taken from here. The picture's looking at this fence line here. And all the trees, all the vegetation is right here, as it says, thickly wooded. Let's go down to the pictures again. And as you can see, these pictures are, again, from 35 feet in the air, and we still cannot see any homes adjacent to the property. In the middle of winter, there are no leaves on the trees, so it only gets better in the summer months to protect the building from the neighbor's view. And that is the presentation in a nutshell. I'm open to any questions. Jim?
Jim?
You're on mute, Jim.
Jim, you're muted.
Okay. I want to make sure that all the lighting is shielded so it only goes down.
They are all dark sky compliant lights.
That's it. Thank you. That's about all we can say.
Okay. Does anyone else have a question? Okay. Remember, I can't see you. You'll have to speak up. I do have a question, and it's kind of out of our purview, but it is a concern of mine. When Tom went out there, he said there is a fairly tall wall at the edge of the property where the houses are, and your septic system is there. I do not know how deep the septic system would be and whether there is any potential of leaching of septage through that stone wall.
I would ask Dave Martin to speak on that, but I highly doubt he designed it to allow for that with the grading. And I can't say for certain, but I believe those stone walls are somewhere in here on the properties. They're
Okay,
not
I don't know.
up against the property line, but
Mhm.
Dave, are you on the call today?
Don't think he is.
Yes, he is. We can.
Oh, he is. Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Can you speak to that, Dave, please?
Dave Martin in.
Actually, I think we're now seeing the approximate area of where that wall is. I assumed it was along the boundary there.
No.
Okay, I don't think I have any further concern of it. You're right, he wouldn't have designed something like that, I believe.
Hi,
Okay,
can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can hear
Dave,
you.
Dave, can you speak to breakout
Yes, I can. Thank you. For the record, David Martin, civil engineer for the site project. That retaining wall, I believe Tom saw, is a steep riprap wall, very close to the back of the house. Breakout for septic system under the code speaks to something on the order of 15 feet from the leaching area. So we're a much larger distance away than that concern. And based on the depth of our system below the grade, there's no conceivable concern for breakout under Title V or in my opinion.
As I said, it's not within our purview, but it was a concern of mine when I looked at the plan.
Happy
Thank
to
you
answer
for
questions. Thank you.
Does anybody have any further concern? Paul?
Yeah, I have two minor questions. One is, I understand the address is going to be corrected at some point in time. Is that correct? There's two numbers. There was some discussion in the backup material that they're going to take care of that with the fire department and DPW.
Shall I speak to that, Don?
I'd like you to.
When I began design work on this project, I had a conversation with the fire department, and they did comment on the numbering or that came up in the discussion. Evidently, they have a system internally of their own that they've used, and somewhere in one of the recent referrals or comments, and maybe Tom could help us out here, I think there are folks who are working on remedying that situation throughout the campus, but I don't know. But that concern is on other people's minds also, and there's a process in place.
Okay, thank you. The other question was, I assume the height of the building is dependent on the cranes and equipment needed to bring in the submersibles and the equipment that Hui is going to store in that building. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, well, this is.
Can I ask a question, Mrs. Chairman?
Of course you can.
Would be happy to fill your schedule on the 16th.
To get our decision on it, right? Well, it looks like, considering we only have one thing for it, we could take that up. What do you think, Tom?
Fine with me. You are the chair, and we should be able to turn a decision around in that week.
That's why I'm asking, okay? The board's okay with that, since I promised there'd only be one thing on the agenda, adding this second one?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for coming tonight and going over all of this with us. So we shall see you on the 16th.
All right, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Okay, move on to planning board discussion. The planning board member appointment to the CPC. John is currently our appointee. His term is going to be finishing. And Carol would like to know whether John wishes to continue, whether he wishes to get off, whether anybody else on the board wishes to serve. In other words, let's get ahead of the curve here a little bit on it. John, are you willing to continue serving?
I am willing to continue, but if someone else would like to be the representative, I step aside for that.
Does anybody else wish to? Tag, you're it, John.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much on that.
Yeah, John gives great reports from those meetings. So
Absolutely.
thank you, John.
Anytime.
We have if you look in your general correspondence, we have a request from the CPC for commentary on the CPC needs assessment hearing. And John, could you explain that a little bit as to the kinds of things they're looking for, please?
So once a year, we have a needs assessment hearing, which is going to be Thursday evening of this week. And we take public comment on what people living in the town of Falmouth believe is the needs, whether it be affordable housing, whether it be for playgrounds or anything of that nature. So we take public testimony, and then we try to formulate our plans after that.
Thank you.
And
Because
that's this,
what their meeting is on Thursday, and we also have a meeting. That's the CPC training on design review. So, you know, I think we have to see what we can do tonight and forward that to the CPC in written form that staff will put together. Does anybody have anything they wish to say at this point tonight on that? Pam?
John, you, I think, will know exactly what I'm going to say. But I would urge the CPC to look at funding more affordable housing in town.
Charlotte?
I'd like to make that a bit more specific. We need rental housing. We need.
Yeah, I think, John,
We don't need more single-family houses. They're nice.
that's right.
It's not what we need. And I think John knows all that, and he's going to carry that message, our message really, from the comprehensive plan to the CPC.
Well, it's also in the forefront of the Affordable Housing Committee that we want to stick with the assessment that was already done that said we needed more affordable rental units, and that single-family houses were definitely not at the top of the needs.
We also need 1 and 2 bedrooms. This is from the housing production plan.
Right.
Right, but
That are the
yeah,
3
Scott,
bedrooms that we get with the 40Bs and other single-family
Right.
houses. I would like to suggest something else. I'm going to go forward with what Bob has been saying for a long time, and that is that we should be looking at rehab of existing buildings for affordable
Absolutely.
housing. I know when we were talking about the golf course out there, I was intrigued that they have a building, and I asked how many units. There are 5 units in that building, but it may be in need of severe rehab. It may be in need of demolishment and rebuilding, but that's the kind of thing that it may be less expensive. It may be more expensive, but I think it should be explored. And I know Bob has been pushing for a long time, instead of just gobbling up more land and building on it, look at things that we can get and rehabilitate. Paul?
Yeah, it's my understanding that CPC does not develop these projects, but just reviews projects that presented for them for funding.
right.
So for us to tell them what to do doesn't seem to be particularly appropriate. If a developer comes in and wants to do rental, affordable housing and whatnot, I'm sure they'll consider it. But I don't believe it's up to CPC to develop projects that they would then review for funding.
I'll disagree, Paul, because they did Little Pond Landing.
Right.
Yeah,
They created that and
and that was
developed
an
it.
exception. That's the first time they've done that, as far as I know. I was on CPC before John kicked me off. We talked about that a little bit, but that one was a very unusual situation where people who were within CBC were actively promoting that project. But it's my understanding that they just review projects that are submitted to them. John, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
So currently, CPC has been having the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund do all the vetting for affordable housing developments. And the number one criteria for Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund is for rental units. And so the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund does the vetting, and then it comes back in front of CPC, and CPC votes to approve or not approve. And if they approve it, then it goes to the Board of Selectmen for final approval.
Right.
So that's the funding mechanism. But for the needs assessment, we also fund historic preservation, and we fund open space. So those are the testimony that we'd like to receive when we have our annual needs assessment. So last year, it was overwhelming for affordable housing. And so this year, we're recommending, CPC is recommending, I believe, about $1.8 million go into affordable housing at town meeting.
Great.
Okay.
But we'll take testimony again Thursday evening, and maybe the town will feel there's a different needs, more pressing need, and that's what we have the needs assessment on an annual basis.
Bob?
John, is there anything, what Pat brought up is something that I have been pushing, is buying existing property. Any of the affordable housing entities in town, are they prohibited from doing that? Buying existing property and rehabbing it? Or do they strictly have to work with land and then develop the property themselves through 40Bs? Or can CPC fund some of these purchases outright?
CPC can fund it, but it's not, there's been a gray area about doing renovation on existing homes that people are living in to keep people in place. But like a Falmouth Housing Trust right now has been looking at a property on Esker Place in North Falmouth that has deteriorated to a certain point, and they've been trying to figure out whether to purchase it and tear it down and rebuild it, or try to purchase it and renovate it. So it can be done, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Pam?
But John, I don't think there's any prohibition of picking up an existing abandoned house and where nobody lives in. I remember at a selectmen's meeting, I asked about when the taxes are so overdue, do they ever do tax taking? And I believe Julian said, no, they don't like to do that. But that there was no reason why somebody couldn't buy a house that the town basically owned because they hadn't paid taxes for 10 or 15 years, excuse me, and have abandoned the property. So to me, that's a perfect opportunity for somebody to come in, and it's much cheaper when a foundation is there, a septic system is there, to do some repairs and just go in and rehab it than stick building from scratch.
Well, you could be right, you could not be right. Just depends on the condition of the property.
Right.
And renovation is very expensive, and it's also a lot of unknowns when you start doing renovation project. And again, CPC only funds. We don't go out and bang nails or do anything of that nature. We fund the applicants as they come in front of us, or we don't fund them, as may be the case.
Jim, you were first, and then Bob.
I just wanted to point out, I've had this discussion with lots of people. The real problem about these one-offs and just doing the single family homes is they don't have the management structure to handle the diverse properties all over the place. And the bigger organizations like to have everything in one place where they can manage it better. And that's a really legitimate argument about the one-off houses, that you also have to have the infrastructure and management to take care of it.
Bob?
See, if it's going to be for a home that is purchased for somebody in the 80% or even the 60%, I don't see where we have to buy a rehab job. Why not buy something that's on the market, and between the housing entity and the CPC come up with the funds to turn it over to a mortgage. We're using the federal government now as our mortgagee, and you turn it over at an affordable rate so that somebody can own their own home at an affordable mortgage But the houses pretty much move in as if anybody else was going, walking around the neighborhood with a realtor or somebody and buying an existing house. We've all had to buy houses that somebody didn't go in first and renovate for us. We went in and took it as is, painted walls and fixed things that needed to be fixed. I don't see where we have to constantly be either building new or renovating new for an affordable unit.
Well, so there's been a lot of commentary tonight to pass on, I think.
Yes, thank you.
Bob, has Habitat ever envisioned getting involved in something like this?
I've joked about moving us into Rehabitat. We have done that a couple times where we've had a house turned over to us and we have redone it. My friend in Michigan, that's all they do is they get derelict houses and they rehab them, or they purchase them and just do cosmetic stuff and turn them over.
And would CPC help by funding some of this? That was the
they
bridge
get
I
their
hoped.
funding either through Habitat or through other organizations. A lot of times it's the county or the town or the state that helps fund it as well.
Okay, so that's another thing to look at. Tom?
And I'm just going to say the caveat on that is those funds are used in exchange for deed restriction on the property that deems it affordable in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Right.
So you just don't get to rehab it and then flip it.
Right.
In exchange for that assistance for that, those funds, the deed restriction, those are produced under a local action unit, a local LIP project to create that affordability.
Because if you drive around town now, I've noticed a lot of houses that have been torn down and big, huge houses going up. And, there aren't going to be a whole lot of little houses left in Falmouth that could be purchased by some organization and made as an affordable unit. And, I know the multifamily district is something that we're looking at. We made small steps with the accessory apartment bylaw. I'd still like to see some other things done in some of the other zonings where we have 1 acre zoning and 2 acre zoning, and maybe we allow for a greater percentage of the houses, the existing house, to be used as rental property. So there are other avenues to pursue here.
Okay. So that gives you some feedback, John, I think.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Charlotte had a question?
Yes.
No, it wasn't. It was really just a comment. I believe the change in the state law now allows accessory units on many other places than just where we said they could go.
Okay.
Is that correct, Tom?
I can't say that definitively at this point without going back and looking at the bylaw or the law change.
Okay. Okay, are there any committee reports? Okay, seeing nobody jumping up. Are there any announcements? Okay. We have general correspondence. We already went into the CPC request, but we also have Complete Streets. They want us to support the bill. It's very interesting. The Federal Complete Streets Act is modeled on a landmark law in Massachusetts that has catalyzed the adoption of nearly 200 local complete street policies and implementation plans and funded over 100 safety projects in just 3 years. The cumulative effect is safer roads for everyone, no matter whether they're walking, biking, scooting, taking transit, or driving. So it's a bill that they want supported. Let's see. I think it's TN-09. It's Senator Edward Markey and Congressman Steve Cohen have reintroduced the Complete Streets Act. So they're looking for support. So anybody in our listening audience or anybody on the planning board who has this information can certainly get involved and support it, but they're looking for it now. So that's general correspondence, future agenda items. Do you have any list of those, Tom?
Yes, ma'am. We'll be back here at this same Zoom channel on Thursday night. for design review guidelines. I know that not everybody can make it to the meeting. Ken Buckland, a town planner, a former principal for the Cecil Group, who is currently the town planner in Wareham, a Falmouth resident and former CPC chairman, will be presenting the program for us. So we're very excited to hear from Ken on Thursday at 6:30. We have invited some of our neighboring towns, but we've gotten very few RSVPs. So I think it's going to be a very quiet night with the planning board and Ken. And then, as we talked about, we'll be back here on March 16th for the discussion on Article 21 and to vote a affirmative motion for 270 Woods Hole Road.
Tom, could you also send the link to the meeting on Thursday?
We can do that.
Thank you. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd asked Melinda if she would do that. We've got the agenda in our packet. So she said, yep, she thinks that that's doable. Hope it works better than mine did tonight. So anyway, I think that's it.
Pat, one comment.
Yes, Paul.
The Transportation Management Committee has a meeting on Thursday night, so I've got a conflict there.
Oh, boy. How many of us are there going to be then at this meeting? I know I'm going to be there. Okay, so there'll be 5 of us anyway there. Oh, Tom, you're going to have to beat up some of our neighboring towns, beat the drums to get them in. So, okay, at least there will be 5 of us. I think that's it, unless anybody else has any further comments.
Move to adjourn.
It is
Second.
8:22. We are adjourned. Thank you all.